10 rounds, 1 nursery wall, 3 sleeping kids, and a single sheet of legal paperwork that ties the woman behind the trigger straight back to Jay-Z's billion-dollar corporate kingdom. A detail every single newsroom in America has buried, ignored, or pretended doesn't exist. So if you're ready to see how the Rihanna Beverly Hills shooting was never the random act of a stranger that the mainstream press is selling you, but something far darker, far more coordinated, and far more terrifying than anyone in Hollywood wants you to whisper out loud, well, before we go any further into this one, and trust me, we have a mountain of receipts to unpack. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on that bell, because the moment this video goes anywhere near the algorithm, you already know the cleanup crews are going to swarm. And really, hit that like, because what I'm about to lay out is going to make the Rock Nation loyalists and the HOV apologists absolutely lose it. They are not going to want you to hear this one. So leave the like, drop the comment, share it with one person who still thinks this case was just a lone Florida woman with a busted GPS. Because by the time we are done, you will look at every talking head on CNN, ABC, and TMZ the exact same way. As carefully managed gatekeepers who left the most important breadcrumb in this entire investigation laying right out in the open, untouched, on purpose. Now let's rewind. March 8th, 2026, 1:20 in the afternoon. Inside the iron gates of a $14 million Beverly Hills compound, Rihanna, the Fenny Empress, the billionaire mogul, a brand new mother 3 times over, the same kid Jay-Z personally signed at 16 years old and turned into the most decorated woman in modern pop, is sitting on her own property with A$AP Rocky, with her 3 babies, RZA, 3 years old, Riot Rose, 4. Baby Rocky Irish only a few months out of the womb, and her own mother in the next room. 10 rounds from an AR-15 style rifle rip through the front gate. 1 slug, according to the unredacted LAPD report the New York Times finally pried loose just 12 days ago, punches through the wall of the nursery. The nursery, where the babies sleep. Let that breathe for a second. Because the mainstream cycle has already rolled past this detail like it's a footnote, like it's a stat line on a graphic, like it's not the most chilling sentence ever printed about a sitting mother in modern celebrity history. And Rihanna's first reaction inside that compound, and this is the part the Times had to fight to publish, is to scream, "They're shooting at us," and physically shove A$AP Rocky onto the floor of a trailer parked on her own land. She didn't run. She didn't freeze. She protected her partner with her body, while her babies were in the line of fire. That is the Rihanna we are talking about. And within 3 hours, before LAPD could even finish swabbing brass off her driveway, a private jet was already in the air out of Van Nuys with her on it. And she has not been spotted at that mansion since. That is not the behavior of someone who thinks a confused stranger got lost on the way to Disneyland. That is the behavior of someone who knows something the rest of us are not being told. So pause right there and ask yourself a simple question. Why does a woman of this magnitude, a woman with the most ruthless private security money can buy, evacuate her own home in under 180 minutes? Why does she leave a property she just renovated, never return, and according to fan page sleuthing, quietly explore listings in Barbados? You don't move like that for a one-off. You move like that when the threat board behind the scenes is bigger than the threat the cameras showed. Alright, the shooter, Ivanna Ortiz, 35 years old, drove a white Tesla with paper plates the entire length of the country, from Florida to California, with an AR-15 style semi-automatic riding shotgun, picked up at the Sherman Oaks Galleria within hours. Hit with attempted murder, 10 counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, 3 counts of unloading on an occupied dwelling. The DA, Nathan Hochman, used the exact words willful, deliberate, and premeditated. Bail set at $10.2 million. On paper, an open and shut psycho-fan story. The kind of headline cable news loves because it has a beginning, a middle, and a tidy little end that doesn't make anybody uncomfortable. Except when investigators started pulling her digital footprint, the picture got weird in a hurry. For weeks before the drive west, Ortiz was tagging Rihanna directly. At Bajal Riri, are you there? Not metaphorical, not encoded. Direct address. A December 20th post where she announced she was already finished with Rihanna and was pivoting her energy to Kim Kardashian. A 60-day prayer marathon she streamed daily on YouTube where she invoked the devil by name and at one point said, and I quote, "Because if I paraphrase you won't believe me. That's Satan. Wants to kill something beautiful, just like his Rihanna." 60 days of that. Public. Indexed. Monetized. Sitting on a platform owned by Google. And nobody flagged it. Nobody intervened. Nobody pinged a single threat assessment unit at LAPD or the Bureau. 60 days of an armed woman publicly rehearsing the murder of an A-list mother of 3, and the response was a notification icon nobody acted on. But that is still not the detail. That is still not the part that has the Navy in detective mode, the part that has Reddit and pop culture chat losing sleep, the part Hollywood is praying you skip over. According to the investigative breakdown from Shakia, published March 10th, Ortiz didn't just stalk Rihanna online. Before she ever turned the key in that Tesla, she filed an injunction-style legal petition against Live Nation. Live Nation, the exact corporate co-parent that sits in business union with Roc Nation. Roc Nation, of course, being the entity Jay-Z built from nothing. The same entity that swallowed a teenage Robin Finney out of Barbados 2 decades ago and forced her into the global juggernaut we know today. So we are supposed to believe, supposed to swallow, that a random Florida woman with no music industry footprint, no label history, no concert promoter beef, somehow ended up filing legal paperwork against HOV's corporate ecosystem first, and then, only then, climbed into a car with an assault rifle and drove 3,000 miles to pour 10 rounds into the gate of his most famous former protege? Make that math work for me. Tell me how that sequence is a coincidence. Because I have been staring at this timeline for days, and I cannot find the version of this story where those two acts are unrelated. The paperwork came first. The bullets came after. That is not a vibe. That is a chain of cause and effect. And here is where it stops being a true crime curiosity and starts being a 5-alarm industry scandal. Because that paperwork against Live Nation didn't drop in a vacuum. It dropped in the exact same news cycle as the Department of Justice's 3 million-page Epstein document release. That dump happened January 30th, 2026. Rihanna's name surfaces in the January 2018 Epstein phone log. 3 days before Ortiz pulled her trigger, on March 5th, Representative Nancy Mace stood at a podium in Washington and publicly demanded that Jay-Z testify under oath about the Epstein materials. 3 days. 72 hours. Then the AR-15 turns the front of the most famous gate in Beverly Hills into Swiss cheese, and the woman holding it has, and I keep coming back to this, a pre-existing paper trail aimed at the man being publicly pressured to testify. Now I have to do the thing every responsible voice has to do in a story like this and tell you flat out. I am not saying Jay-Z ordered anything. I am not saying Beyoncé did anything. I am not saying Roc Nation has a contract on anyone. There is no evidence of that. None. Law enforcement has drawn zero such line. The closest the public conspiracy chatter has gotten is a viral drama channel piece on a different platform that racked up north of 200,000 views pushing the hitman angle with absolutely no proof attached. That theory is unconfirmed. Pure speculation. File it under stand fiction. What I am saying, and this is the part the mainstream is too cowardly to print, is that we have a verifiable paper trail, a verifiable Epstein log, a verifiable congressional summons, and a verifiable shooter, and every single one of those threads brushes up against the same corporate hallway. And nobody on primetime will say it. Nobody on the morning shows will say it. Nobody on the late-night couches will say it. So we are saying it here. Now here is a wrinkle that has cropped up in the last 72 hours. And this is the kind of detail I haven't seen anybody else surface yet. Fanside accounts running cross-checks on Ortiz's deleted prayer streams have started flagging a recurring phrase she used in 3 separate broadcasts. A reference to a list. Not her hit list. A list she described as already existing, already circulating, already known to people she described, in her own broken cadence, as the ones who count. Now, again, this woman was in active psychiatric decline. This could be pure delusion. This could mean nothing. But it could also be the exact sliver of language that explains why on May 19th, almost 90 days after the shooting, a Los Angeles judge quietly slid this entire prosecution off the public docket and into mental health competency court. That ruling effectively freezes the case. No discovery, no trial, no cross-examination, no public reading of her devices in open court. The most explosive question in modern celebrity crime, who, if anyone, was she talking to, gets locked behind an evaluation that could drag on for years. That is what they wanted. That is exactly what they wanted. Because the second a competency hold drops, the conversation in the press dies. It is the cleanest possible way to make a story disappear without ever actually answering it. And to be crystal clear, I am not accusing the judge of corruption. I am not saying the system rigged it. The mental health pathway exists for legitimate reasons, and based on what we have publicly seen of Ortiz's behavior, she very likely belongs in clinical care. The point is not that the ruling is wrong. The point is that the ruling is convenient. There is a difference, and we are allowed to notice the difference. Meanwhile, look at how the principles have moved since. A$AP Rocky has not posted publicly about the shooting once. Not a syllable. The man who built an entire persona on candid, freewheeling commentary about his own life has gone full radio silence. Rihanna has not returned to the property. The mansion sits empty, security still on rotation, lights on a timer. Jay-Z has not addressed the case in any public setting, not even in a charitable framing of standing with the family, which is the bare minimum response you would expect from the literal godfather of her career. The Bayhive, historically the most vocal stan army on the planet, has gone almost monastically silent on the topic, which in stan culture is its own deafening statement. The Navy is split clean down the middle, half frozen with fear, half in deep dive forensic mode, pulling apart frame-by-frame bodycam audio. And the Pretty Little Thugs, A$AP Rocky's own fanbase, have started openly asking online why he hasn't said one single word about the night someone tried to murder his family. Read that again. His own fans are asking. And then there is the trailer. Why was Rihanna inside a trailer on her own land at 1:20 in the afternoon on a Sunday? The official line is loose renovation work. Fine. Plausible. Except the trailer is also where the LAPD audio captures her screaming, "They're shooting at us." Which means at the moment of impact, she was not inside a $14 million mansion with hardened glass and panic room infrastructure. She was inside a hollow aluminum box on wheels. A box that any AR-15 round would tear through like wet paper. So which is it? Was she there by accident, the unluckiest woman in California? Or was she there because she already knew the main house was no longer safe, and she was already moving around her own property in defensive mode? Dramaside TikTok has been pushing the theory that she had been tipped off about a threat in the weeks prior and chose to stay anyway, perhaps believing the security perimeter was tighter than it actually was. That theory is unconfirmed. I want to be honest with you. We don't have a receipt for that yet. But the timeline supports the suspicion enough that it is no longer crazy to ask the question. And while we are asking questions, let's talk about Riot Rose's nursery wall. Because the smaller niche corners of the internet, the mommy fan accounts, the lifestyle stan boards, the parenting communities that don't usually weigh in on celebrity gossip, they have been begging the bigger outlets to focus on the nursery for 2 months now, and the bigger outlets have been ducking it. A round of military-grade ammunition tore through a wall behind which a 4-year-old child and an infant were sleeping. That is the sentence. That should be on every front page in this country. And it isn't. Because, as one Reddit user put it in a thread that has now passed 12,000 comments, it makes the story too dark to scroll past. It makes it too uncomfortable for the brand-safe ad ecosystem. It makes advertisers nervous. And so the most damning physical detail in the entire crime scene, the splintered drywall behind a baby's crib, has been politely set down and walked away from. And let's add one more layer to this, because the wider industry context is something the headlines keep amputating from the story. We are not living through a normal celebrity news cycle. We are living through the aftermath of the largest single document drop in entertainment history. 3 million pages out of the DOJ on January 30th. Names in those pages that the public has only seen 1% of. Diddy already in federal custody on an entirely separate matter, with his own attorneys publicly arguing that any tangential mention in the Epstein files should be sealed because of the prejudicial spillover. That motion got filed in February, which means there is a legal infrastructure right now, active, billable, working overtime, whose entire job description is to keep certain names from echoing in the public square. Is it really that difficult to imagine that the same infrastructure has been brushing the dust off the Rihanna story too? Because once you understand that the music industry's biggest law firms have spent the first quarter of 2026 running cleanup on adjacent celebrity mentions, the suppression of the Live Nation paper trail stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like standard operating procedure. And here is the cruelest twist of it all. Rihanna, of every artist Jay-Z has ever signed, is arguably the most loyal alumni he has. She never publicly clashed with him. She never burned the Roc Nation bridge the way other former signees have. She showed up for him at his charity galas. She has been the model of post-label decorum. So if there is any tension here, and the silence from his camp screams there is, it is not because she stepped out of line. It is because something else, something structural, something paper, has put her on the wrong side of a vault somebody very powerful is desperate to keep locked. Now zoom all the way out. Look at this thing from altitude. Look at all 5 threads laid side by side. Thread 1. The shooter had a verified pre-existing legal grievance against Live Nation, Roc Nation's corporate sibling. Thread 2. Rihanna's name surfaces in the unsealed Epstein phone log. Thread 3. Jay-Z is being publicly hounded by a sitting congresswoman to testify about Epstein's 72 hours before the gunfire. Thread 4. The suspect is moved into mental health proceedings that effectively freeze every avenue of public discovery. Thread 5. The principals, including HOV himself, have gone radio silent across the board. Pull all 5 of those threads tight in your hand and ask yourself if you have ever, in your adult life, Seen a celebrity violence story with this many independent strands of suspicion that the press refused to even braid together for the audience? I haven't. I've covered industry stories for years, and I haven't. This is not normal. This is engineered silence. And engineered silence always means somebody upstairs is paying attention. So where does this go from here? With the case parked indefinitely in competency court, the legal calendar effectively goes quiet. That is, by design, the perfect environment for a story to die. But the cultural calendar is a different animal, and the cultural calendar is not cooperating. Every week that passes, Rihanna gets photographed somewhere that isn't Los Angeles. Every week that passes, A$AP Rocky's silence gets louder. Every week that passes, the New York Times drips another sliver of the LAPD interview. Every week that passes, a new TikTok creator finds another deleted Ortiz prayer stream upload and runs it through a transcription tool. The pressure is not releasing. The pressure is compounding. And when pressure compounds against a story that powerful people want suffocated, one of two things eventually happens. Either a second piece of paperwork surfaces, a deposition leak, a subpoena, a sealed document accidentally unsealed, or somebody on the inside, somebody close to the family or close to the shooter, decides their conscience is heavier than their NDA. Either one of those triggers, and this story detonates a second time. And the second time will be louder than the gunshots. And one more thing before we land this plane, because I have been saving it. Multiple drama site accounts on Threads in the last 48 hours have started circulating a screenshot. Unverified. I want to stress that, completely unverified, of what they claim is a second mention of Rihanna's name in a still unreleased tranche of the Epstein materials. Sealed. Not in the January 30th dump. Allegedly held back. Allegedly slated for a future release tied to ongoing federal litigation. I cannot authenticate that screenshot. I will not pretend I can. But the fact that it is circulating, the fact that thousands of users are taking it seriously, the fact that not a single mainstream outlet has even acknowledged its existence to debunk it, tells you everything you need to know about the current trust gap between the public and the press on this story. Either that screenshot is fake and the press should be saying so loudly, or it is real and the press is sitting on it. There is no third option. And the longer the silence holds, the more weight the rumor gathers. That is how these things compound. That is how a single piece of paper, real or fabricated, becomes a cultural force of its own. Now here is the part where I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. When you first heard about this case, you probably heard the surface-level cable news version. Crazy woman, AR, 15, Beverly Hills, attempted murder, suspect in custody. Roll credits. That is what the gatekeepers wanted you to walk away with. A neat, contained, self-explanatory tragedy with no second act. But the second act is already happening. The second act is the paperwork against Live Nation. The second act is the Epstein log. The second act is the congressional pressure on HOV. The second act is the competency freeze. The second act is the silence. And the third act, the act nobody has written yet, is whatever surfaces the next time somebody in this story decides they are done being quiet. If you are still here, you are different. You are the part of the audience that doesn't just want the headline. You want the wiring underneath the headline. So do me a favor. Drop a comment with the one detail in this story that nobody else has been talking about, because every single comment thread on this case has at least one user surfacing a receipt nobody else saw. Subscribe if you want the next layer of this thing when it breaks, because it is going to break. And when it does, I want you to hear it from somebody who has been tracking the timeline from day one, and not from a primetime anchor reading a teleprompter cleared by 3 layers of legal. Because in the end, this is the part that should keep you up at night. The most famous woman in pop, the most photographed mother on the planet, had her front gate sprayed with rifle fire while her newborn slept 30 feet away, and the single most explosive detail in the entire police file. A paper trail leading from the shooter straight to the corporate hallway of the man who manufactured her stardom in the first place, has been quietly, professionally, surgically erased from the public conversation. Erased from the morning shows, the evening shows, the magazine covers, every newsroom in America. Except this one. Right here. Right now. And listen, before you scroll, I want to leave you with one final question. The one that has been gnawing at me since the New York Times piece dropped. The one I cannot get out of my head no matter how many times I rewatch the bodycam audio clips. If Rihanna was inside that trailer when the shots started flying, and she pushed A$AP Rocky to the floor with her own hands, then who was inside the main house with her 3 babies? Who was inside with the babies? The official record says her mother was on the property. Cool. Fine. But that $14 million compound is not a one-room cabin. It is multiple structures across multiple acres. The geography of that property matters, and not one outlet has published a clean diagram of where each family member was at the moment of impact. Not one. Because the second somebody publishes that diagram, the public starts asking a question nobody on the payroll wants asked, which is, how does a mother get separated from her infants during a sustained burst of automatic gunfire on her own land? There is an answer to that question. Somebody knows. And somebody is being very, very paid to make sure that somebody never says it out loud. Book this clip. Save it. Send it. Because the next time this case cracks open, and it is going to crack open, you are going to remember exactly where you heard it first. The bullets were never the whole story. The bullets were the headline. The paperwork was the story. And somebody, somewhere very high up the food chain, is praying every single night that you never connect the two. Now you have.